Hey friends, welcome to Granite Garden Cottage. In today's video we are going to do a brief property tour of our property, and I'm going to go through some plans that we have to turn our property into a homestead. Right now it's just a residential property, but we do have about 2 acres, and so we do have some plans to imminently turn this spot into a thriving homestead. So come with me as we check it out. Okay friends, so we are currently looking at my front yard behind me. I'll try to get into a better position here. So in the front yard we actually have our buried propane tanks and the septic system. So we aren't planning on doing a whole lot in the front yard in the way of gardens or animals or anything like that, but I do want to do one strip of berries right along this back tree line, and then a strip of berry bushes along the front roadway. And I think that that's pretty much the long and short of what we will do in the front yard. You can see my big granite rock by the driveway. And then next we'll just swivel around, and you can see actually on the opposite side of my yard there's like this strip here of just bushes, and actually these bushes are largely berry bushes. I have a lot of blueberries actually in here. They're low bush blueberries, and they are wild, native to this area. So I'm considering pulling out all of these pine needles and pulling out these bushes that are not berry bushes and just leaving all the wild native blueberries, and kind of seeing how much they produce next year. If they don't produce a lot, I would probably rip them out and try to do something else in their place. Also in this area is a lot of, let me see if I can find some, a lot of wintergreen on the floor over here. I don't know if there's actually any that you're seeing in this moment, but we do have a lot of wintergreen strewn throughout this area as well. So yeah, I think my plan for now will be kind of pull out all of the pine needles, pull out all of the weeds essentially, and leave the native blueberries, and just see kind of how many we end up with and how much they produce next year. If they produce a fair amount, then I will keep them. If they end up not really producing a whole lot, then I will probably rip them out and plant something else in their place, or I will interplant some additional things in here, like maybe even more blueberry bushes, high bush blueberries or something like that. So I have this whole strip here. The only issue with this strip is that the tree line of our property is pretty close by, and the sunlight actually gets blocked a lot of the day on this area. So it does get a fair amount of morning and mid-noon sun, but it doesn't really get like a good full day of sunlight. So I'm still kind of deciding how I feel about this section of the property, all this, but we'll see. Moving on, this is that whole section here. It kind of goes down a ways, but you can see there's just like a lot of bushes and shrubbery, and a lot of that is blueberries. And then we come around here to the backyard. So the backyard, this is our apple tree. It's actually 2 apple trees that are kind of planted literally side by side and have grown kind of together into what looks like one tree. This thing, let me get out of the way. This apple tree needs to be trimmed so badly. So in the early spring, that's my plan, to trim up the apple tree. And then this is our backyard right now. This little carport was left from the previous owners, so my plan for this, let's go over to it now. Okay, so this is the carport. Let's see if Get some more light in here for you. So my plan is to replace all of this black tarping with a greenhouse or a high tunnel plastic. And my goal is to turn this space into a very small high tunnel. Yeah, so I'm actually really excited about this. This was not something we negotiated in the sale, but something they offered us. So really excited to have this and turn it into a small high tunnel. I think that this will serve us really nicely. So excited about that. And then you can see this is like a little loam pile that was left from the previous owners. My plan for this is to kind of just turn it into compost, and I'll use it to fill garden beds in the spring or when we start building garden beds this fall. So there's that. This isn't going to be near enough, but it's something, and it's nice we received it in the sale of the home, so it's not something we had to buy separate from the sale of our home. And then behind me, you'll see just a ton of trees. This goes back like 500 feet, and it is all wooded, very thickly wooded. So my plan, if you can see back there, my plan is to clear all of these trees. I'm going to start with the thinner, kind of scraggly ones that I think are a little bit more manageable, and see how much I can clear on my own of this property, maybe with some help from friends and family. But the previous owner of this property did start cutting down some trees and did start clearing things out a little. You can see all the logs that he had left behind. So I think I want to try to use these logs that he left for building garden beds, and then whatever I cut down as well will be used to build some garden beds. So I'm kind of playing with my plan with that, but that is, much more preferred in my opinion to use what I have rather than buy a bunch of lumber to make raised garden beds. Unfortunately, this area that I will be clearing, that's going to become all open space and garden beds, this space is just really wooded. So there's going to be a ton of tree roots here, and probably a lot of granite rock, because we do live in the granite state, and it seems like you can't dig a hole in this state without coming up with a big piece of granite. So when I factor that in and consider that, that's where I came up with the idea of just doing full raised garden beds, even though I know initially it's going to be a big project to build a ton of garden beds and fill them. I think in the long run I will thank myself, because digging into this to get like a good deep garden I think would be very, very difficult. So especially without heavy equipment, I just don't see it. So we're going to do all raised garden beds back here. This weekend I'm going to work on clearing as much of this space as I can and kind of seeing what is possible, how much of this is possible to clear out on my own. These larger trees behind me definitely going to need to be professionally taken down. They're just really massive oak trees, and they're not that far from my house. So if these fall the wrong way, I am very much at risk of having my home hit with a giant oak tree, and I am just not prepared for that. So we're going to have professionals come take those down. I just don't know exactly when we're going to have the resources to do that. So we're going to focus on what is manageable for now. There's a ton of smaller trees, a ton of smaller brush that I think is very possible for us to clear out back here, open it way out, and then we'll have the freedom to put quite a few garden beds in here. So that's my goal, and we're going to see how much progress we can make on that this weekend. So that's exciting. And then lastly, kind of show you our maple trees. So you can see these two maple trees I marked out, and then maybe you can see it. See if you can see it in this video, or if we can see it in this video. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but through the tree line in here I have another one marked out. So that's 3 in this general vicinity. And then there is, just walking to the other side of the property line here, we have Another tree here marked out. Another tree there. Oop, I can't point to it in this video, but it's over there, marked out. And then we have another tree. Where are you? There it is, marked out over there. So those are the 3 trees I have over here, and then the 2 more on that side, plus the one in the back, and there's 1 more tucked back. So there's 9 total that we're planning to tap this year. Okay friends, so once again we are in the backyard. We have our carport here that the plan is to replace all of this black tarping with high tunnel plastic. So keep your eye out for that video. This is a great thing to experience, to receive in the sale of our home. And then as far as our backyard goes, it's relatively small for the purposes we're trying to achieve, but we do have this established apple tree. I think that apple tree will serve us really well once we're able to trim it down pretty severely and train it a little bit. And then panning to the right here, you can see that we have these logs here in the backyard that were cut and left, and I'm hoping to turn those into some raised garden beds and or a chicken coop. I guess I haven't 100% decided what the plan is for that, but that is something we want to make use of anyway. We have our 2 marked maple trees just behind these logs over here, and this is the tree line to the woods that go back about 500 feet or so. We have our beginner compost pile, what will be a compost pile, and just like a lot of brush that has already been knocked down by the previous owners. So I think that we are going to be able to clear quite a bit of this ourselves. These trees are pretty small and manageable, so I think that it looks like a big thick mess right now, but I think once we really get into it and start pulling everything out, it's going to open up pretty quickly, and we're going to see how much progress we're able to achieve in, I'm hopeful, a very small amount of time, or a relatively small amount of time. And then these thinner trees are all going to be used to make raised garden beds. My plan is to hopefully stack them on top of each other until they're like a foot thick and use them that way for garden beds. So once again, this is the backyard and everything we have going on right now in the backyard. You can see our vehicles. And then this next, the driver's side of my door is that strip I told you about before, where all of those wild blueberry bushes are. We're gonna kind of see what happens with those over time. This is the backyard. Okay friends, so once again, this is the side yard that has all of the blueberry bushes interdispersed with other weeds and shrubbery. Lots of wintergreen kind of littered throughout here. And just to reiterate once again, my current plan is to rip out all of the weeds and just leave the native low bush blueberries and see how much they produce for us next year. And then that will help us decide if we leave them or if we pull them out and make different use of this space in this area. But this whole strip right along here is usable space to some degree. Guys, get this cute little, look at this cute little pine tree. I joked with my husband that this cute little pine tree should be our Christmas tree this year, and I think he was into it. So we might actually end up doing that. I don't know, we'll see. This is that massive granite rock in the front of our property. And then of course our front yard I showed earlier, where I hope to put a strip of berry bushes along the front of the roadway and a strip of berry bushes along this tree line of our property. Gets a lot of sunlight, but we are going to avoid putting much more in this area because of the buried septic tank as well as the fuel tanks that are in this area. Our hope is to rip out all of these plants in the front of the house to really open it up and allow more sunlight into the home. All right, my friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me while we did a short property tour. You know, there's not a whole lot to see yet, but this is just the beginning and this is our baseline for the future. So I'm really excited to see how much progress we're able to achieve before winter this year and also how much we're able to grow in the next year. So stay with me. We have a lot more to come. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.